All right, welcome to the next episode of FieroCast. This episode is going to be very good. It's a podcast about Fierorama and what goes into it. We're going to get some insight on what, if you're a volunteer, what to look for, and participant insight. So let's start off the FieroCast with a Fiero fact. And I know I posted this on Facebook, but how many of you know when the very first annual Fierorama took place? Give you a hint. Was not in September. It was actually in June of 1996. And it was held in Darien, Illinois. And then as years went on, it had a couple of different locations, and it is now current home in Potawatomi Park in St. Charles, Illinois. All right, so I'd like to welcome everybody to today's podcast, and we've got some guests here with us. We've got Jim Hallman, Bill Clicker, Paul Vargas, and Ken Brown. So again, very excited to talk about Fierorama today. You can find our podcasts at fierofocus.com, our YouTube channel, and at N.I.F E Club on Facebook, and at Fierorama on Facebook. So, all right, let's get started. And here we go. We are going to be talking Fierorama. Our guests today are Jim Hallman, Paul Vargas, Bill Clicker, and Ken Brown. So thank you guys all for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having us, Mike.
Thank you.
So let's jump right in. So how did the name of Fierorama come about?
The name Fierorama came about, and shortly after our holiday party in December of 1995. Paul Vargas actually coined the term Fierorama, so I'll let Paul kind of explain the background of that word. Paul?
Yeah, I remember that party. We sat around talking about having some sort of a Fiero gathering, a Fiero get-together, and actually it was right at that particular party that night that we started talking about it, and I remembered back years ago where GM did some things, some road trips, and they called them autoramas. And for some reason at that point in time, I just said, "Oh, what about if we use the word Fiero and then add the Rama to the back of it?" It's kind of a play on what GM did with their travels around the country with showing off new cars. And everybody thought that was a good idea at the time. So I think actually we coined that name that night at that Christmas party at one of our club members' homes in Naperville.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's what I remember too. Was that the idea of having something unique, just kind of terming the word Fierorama just gave us that kind of individual spin, because all the rest of the Fiero clubs in the area around the Midwest were hosting their own car shows, or starting to host their own car shows at the time. And, we just wanted to do something a little bit different to make our show our own. So we've been using Fierorama ever since.
That's awesome. When was the official first Fierorama held, and why did you want to hold a car show as a club, or as in all Fiero show?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the very first Fierorama was actually in June. I looked it up. It's June 23rd of 1996. Was held in Darien, Illinois, at the Chestnut Court Shopping Center, which was a very high traffic area in Darien near Downers Grove, Illinois. And we wanted to get a lot of foot traffic, as much foot traffic as we possibly could, in order to show off our cars. And I think we had roughly 77, I think it was, at our first show.
Was that the location with Home Run In Pizza?
Yes, correct.
That was
Yep.
great pizza.
Yeah, so that was kind of our basis for having access to restrooms, and there were other events that took place at that Chestnut Court Shopping Center that were car show related. So we figured, well, if the shopping center management is already open to having events there, then they should be open to having our show there, which they were. So
Yeah, we went to them and got permission. We told them, we were asked them if we could do this, and they said it didn't seem to bother them at all that we were going to do that. So we did have permission to do it. And again, the important thing was that there was a place for food and restrooms. So it really worked out well, because the pizza place in that shopping center was freestanding right in the middle. So we basically had our car show pretty much around it. And so it was a very convenient location for everybody.
yeah, and then if I remember right, they even set up a like an individual pizza program, where people that were hungry, they could actually order an individual pizza, and kind of a package deal that you could have for lunch. So it worked out real well.
Yeah, they even had a separate. They even had a separate window in the back on the side of the building where you could go over and pick up or order your pizza without even having to go in the front door. So they were, they worked with us very well.
Yeah, my first Fierorama was '97, and for lunch, I think in '97. So Fierorama 2, they were actually doing slices, so you could just go up to that window and order a slice or two of pizza.
Yeah. And the second question, Mike, about why we wanted to hold the show, it was kind of the thing to do in the mid 1990s. I mean, every Fiero club in the Midwest and really across the U.S. was starting to have a show of some kind, and it was, again, just to kind of keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, with the other Fiero clubs. We decided, well, let's have our own show. Something we did the first year, because this was kind of the first time any of the board members had ever put on an event like this. It was just open to club members only. We didn't want to open it up to anyone outside, just for kind of keeping it more localized, just to see how many club members we could get together. And that was kind of the real theme of how it came about, as in honor of the daily driven Fiero. We weren't really looking for all the high-end show Fieros at the time. We were just looking to see how many club members we could get together at the time. So we had it inclusive of our own club members, just trying to see, how many of us could get together. And again, starting in '97, that's when we opened it up to all the rest of the Fiero clubs in around the Midwest and around the U.S.
All right.
Jim, remember that our whole concept, when we first started or came up with this plan to have this, we shied away from using the word show and calling it Fierorama as opposed to a car show. We encouraged all the members just to come, enjoy it, bring your car. This is, you don't have to have a show car. Just come out, enjoy this, meet other club members, and have a good day. So, and of course, that's always been kind of the intention all right along, that we've promoted Fierorama that way.
Yeah.
Is that
but over time, a lot of the other shows have just kind of morphed into that. There was a period of time where all of us were, or many of us were competing against one another and trying to get trophies, et cetera, et cetera. But then all of a sudden, it's like, what? The heck with the trophies, and it's really just become a reason to gather together and socialize. The Fiero just brings us together. That's the purpose of bringing us together. But really, it's just a social event to reconnect with your friends.
Yeah, and back then it was just Sundays, and over the years you guys have increased it to from a 1-day to a 2-day to a 3-day event. When did you guys start looking at that type of change through the years?
It was kind of interesting. It just kind of evolved that way. I forget what year it started, but initially it was just the one-day event on Sunday, and then to encourage participation from people that were traveling a long distance, V8 Archie decided to host a pizza party for the out-of-town guests. And that kind of started the event into a Saturday night pizza party, and then Sunday the show, which people then could travel on Saturday, stay overnight at the hotel. You could have a pizza dinner that was sponsored by Archie. I mean, any out-of-town guest, Archie picked up the pizza dinner for, and he did that for a number of years, encouraging people from out of town to come to Fierorama. And then eventually we decided to expand it further into some type of activity, either Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. And then it's eventually, over the past several years, it's evolved into a 3-day event where we go to a cruise night on Friday night. And then we have some type of an event Saturday, the traditional pizza party Saturday night, and then the show on Sunday.
How
and Jim,
many?
I think and Mike, I think you came the second year, and you came to the Darien location, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, I did.
And I think that's the year it rained. Is that correct, Jim? The second year,
yeah.
when the show was just about coming to the end, and while we did do some awards, at the end of these shows, it started to rain just before the awards.
Yeah.
And we managed to get everybody into the home run-in pizza in a kind of a room where you could have a party. And I remember that room just absolutely jammed with people, but we got through it.
Yep.
Gave out the awards, and everybody went home.
Yeah, the people were all wet too, because it was one of those storms that just kind of blew in, and all of a sudden it wasn't just like a sprinkle. I mean, it was just like a downpour.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That and the one that we had in Oak Brook at the McDonald's. I think that was probably about 5 or 6 years later, and same thing.
Yeah,
everybody was crammed into the McDonald's.
Yeah, we used McDonald's to give out the awards. Yeah.
The actually was the first. I didn't look up this detail, but it was the first. I think it was the first maybe 5 of the first 7 Fieroramas had rain associated with it. So much so that our show had a dubious nickname of Rainorama instead of Fierorama, because every year we had some type of rain event, whether it was just raining in the day of, just kind of a light sprinkle, or you'd have these huge storms that kind of blew in during the event and just dumped rain on everything. And some days or some years the whole show was just kind of rained out, and eventually then we finally got out of that bad dark cloud scenario, and we had many years, including the recent ones where we've had beautiful blue skies every day. So
yeah.
When did the event move to September from June?
It was interesting. The first year it was in June, and after that we moved it to September. The reason being is there were so many other Fiero car shows that were taking place, and the Dells Run traditionally started the event or started the show season, and that was always the weekend after Memorial Day. And then we figured, well, we'll take a month or two after that, so we took late June, and then there were so many there's only so many weekends in the summertime that it was just overlapping with too many events. And by the second year, by Fiorama number 2, we decided, we have the start of summer at Memorial Day. We have the close of summer at Labor Day. Why not just have our event the weekend after Labor Day? And it's been the weekend after Labor Day ever since the second Fiorama back in 1997.
That's a nice way to close out the season too.
Yep.
Jim, I wanted to ask one question. I know when you and Paul were talking about the first Fiorama, and so when you went from a concept and a show name to the first event, that was a pretty compressed 6 months, right? What was that like in comparison to future events where you had a whole year to plan this thing out?
Yeah, because really we started in December, probably because that was late December at our holiday party, and we probably started in January. So January through June was, I remember there were a lot of meetings. We were meeting probably every 2 weeks or so, just trying to plan this whole thing out. I remember, we used to meet at the McDonald's in Oak Brook, which we had found based on the Cruisin' Tigers Indian Uprising car show. And we would just meet there for dinner because it was kind of centrally located for many of us. And we would just, meet there, 6 o'clock or so, and we'd finish up around 8:30 or 9. And, just trying to hash out everything and, trying to based on other experiences that we've had at other car shows, just trying to incorporate our own ideas. Well, we have to cover, ideas, we have to cover this, and well, let's do it this way because we want to have our show differently. So there were quite a few months where we had probably 2 to 3 meetings a month, and I'll never forget that. The first show took place on June 23rd, and Saturday, June 22nd, I think I got maybe 1 or 2 hours of sleep just trying to make sure that we had everything covered, because we had, 70 people coming, and you certainly don't want to overlook something. And, the first few years were pretty hectic, and then after you get your formula down, then it becomes a lot easier. Then it's just plugging in, okay, well, this year we're going to do this differently. This year we're going to improve this area of it. And as board members, you guys can attest to the amount of planning that goes into into an event like this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge outline that I just keep updating year by year, and it's really helping myself out. It's really helping all of us out to make sure that we don't miss anything, and we come off with a very polished professional event.
Yeah, I think that the first one, as I recall, I don't even think we got insurance for that event. Do you remember, Jim? I don't think so.
No, yeah, I don't think we got insurance for probably the first 5 events or something like that. Just because
Well, the good news was that we were only planning for a one-day event. As we have moved on, of course, then we've added, the weekend event, so that takes a lot more time in planning too.
Yeah.
Now, in going along with the planning stages, like Bill was asking, over the years, there's been many themes associated, but originally you guys had Fierorama noted as Daily Driven Fiero, in honor of the Daily Driven Fiero.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about, and when did you guys start looking at themes?
I'm going to say going back to Paul's comment, the first Fierorama was really just designed around, bringing as many club members as we possibly could together just to meet one another. So it wasn't, again, about the show and the trophies and all the rest of that. It was really more about just getting people together. And we decided, well, I mean, you have to do something. You have to provide some kind of activity, and we figured the best way to get people to interact was to have voting on cars. So we divided the cars up by model year the first couple of years, model year and then body style, and then we broke them down within those 2 categories by mileage. So we had Fieros that had roughly 0 to, let's say, 45 or maybe 50,000 miles together. And then we had 50 to 100, and then we had over 100,000 miles. That way, the theory was that you were competing against cars that had the same amount of wear and tear on them, so that, you weren't having a trailer queen competing against a car with 100,000 miles just because they were both, 86 GTs. So the first several years, because, you figure at 1995, 96, 97, the cars were still, daily driven. They were only, 10 years old or so. So people were still using them for their daily transportation. And we just wanted to honor the cars that were being driven. And again, not trying to get the show cars out. We were trying to get as many club members out so that, you could meet one another. So that was kind of the original origins of honoring the daily driven Fiero.
Do you see a lot of daily drivers still attend the show, or is it more that where people are starting to preserve the car and not drive them as much during the year?
Yeah, I would say at this point, because the cars are getting so old, that it's very few and far between that you actually see a daily driven Fiero. I mean, we still have our show doesn't have it, but I know the Dells Run has a daily driver class, and it's it's got a couple of sparse 3-4 cars in that class thereabouts. So it's really evolved from a daily driven car to a more specialty owner car, where the person that owns the Fiero really wants that particular car added to their collection of automobiles that they use for transportation. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
No, I agree. That's where it's headed, and it'll continue to head in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think the theme still holds true, though. That you're still honoring the daily driven Fiero, even if maybe the definition of daily driven is changing, if that's a way to look at it. Because back when you started, it was people driving these cars to work and driving them every day, literally. Now it's more. It's not necessarily a trailer queen. It's not a car you keep in the garage all the time, but you drive it a fair amount. So maybe we just have to modify the definition a little bit to fit today's trends.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, Bill. That a lot of there's very few cars that are Fieros that are trailered to Fierorama. I mean, most cars are driven, and they some people drive like the event this year. They come from Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and people are driving their cars to the event. So it's not that you're driving it daily, but you are still driving it. I mean, people are not trailering their Fieros yet at this point. So brings up a good point.
Looking through the years, the show has added themes to them. What was the basis behind those, and have you seen a lot of people look at those themes and kind of gear showing their car off at Fierorama to those themes?
Mm-hmm. I think the theme idea has been kind of an evolution, and I don't think it was intentional. As we had mentioned earlier, that the original theme was to get as many cars together as possible, as they were daily driven cars, and I think that the theme idea just kind of came about as trying to keep the event fresh and different each year. And Mike, you're kind of the originator of the theme ideas, and I think it allows us to kind of focus in on something to make the event more enjoyable, as opposed to just being another car show. Because once we come up with a theme of some kind, then we kind of build all these little fun things into it to make it enjoyable for us as the board members that are planning the event. And we sincerely hope that it's enjoyable for the participants that are coming to the event, that it's something new and something different. And after having 24 Fieroramas, it's like, well, I came to the event last year, maybe I won't go this year. But I think the thinking behind having a theme involved with the show is to kind of keep it something fresh and new, and just add a little bit different spin on it in order to make it different from the previous year. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that?
I would definitely agree with that, particularly like when we did the 22nd, the Deuces Wild show, because where you were handing out $2 bills for everybody that had a 2 in their VIN, and I think I had 4 2s in my VIN number. How could I not come to Fierorama that year?
Yeah. And like Ken said, I mean, it's stuff like that makes it memorable from year to year, and makes it a little bit different, so that you enjoy you enjoy the show even more than you did the previous year, and there's something memorable about it that you're going to recall Oh, remember, like you said, remember Fierorama 22 when we did this? And one of the themes for me was the movie theme when we did the what the heck was the title of it? I had it written down here when we did all the different themes for the movies and the Academy Awards ceremony theme, where we had, we had a popcorn cart, we had, the red carpet. I bought this tuxedo style shirt to do the award ceremony, and we had all the winners walking up on the red carpet. I mean, just all that, I think, just adds a little bit of individuality to each Fiorama.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the most entertaining Fioramas that we've had.
Mm-hmm. And it's fun, it gives us, our board members here, it gives us the enjoyment of, of planning it out and, just coming up with the different ideas. Once we have a theme, then it's like, well, we should do this. And then we figure out, okay, well, how are we going to do that? And, like Ken had mentioned about the twos, it's like, well, Fiorama 22, let's, somebody came up with the idea of $2 bills, and it's like, well, how do we award the $2 bills? And then we said, well, what about cars that have 2 in the VIN numbers? I mean, it's just random fun stuff just to kind of keep the event fresh each year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for myself, it was definitely, as I mentioned, the Academy Awards ceremony theme. I think the actual title was Fiorama Goes to the Movie. It was Fiorama 23 back in 2013, it looks like, according to all of my Dash Black collections. And, again, as I mentioned, selling the popcorn and, all the different movie theme posters that you created, Mike, that had a Fiero involved with it, and, auctioning off those posters to raise money to fund the show. Again, just the enjoyment I think that we all get out of planning some of these events is just as exciting as hosting the event itself.
The themes do kind of break it up a bit and differentiate year to year. We're doing the same show, basically. We do mix it up as much as we can, and we introduce new things, but the theme gives it a distinct memory from that year, so it separates in your mind, the 2000, or the 2019 event from the 2018 event, which may blur together over a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does help separate those shows, and it kind of gives it more nostalgia too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it gives us something to advertise and promote, as the show comes up, and gives it a new spin every year, rather than just saying, well, it's Fiorama 17 or Fiorama 19. It adds something to it that's different from previous years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important when we're marketing or talking about it or promoting it on all of our venues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ken, your thoughts?
I'm actually just sitting here thinking about the Fioramas I've been to over the years, and I did the 22 one that I mentioned before. Obviously, I mean, covered my entry charge, but but even what was it, 21? Which one was Get on the Fiero train? Where there was like a rail theme through the whole event.
2023.
Yeah, 23.
Was it 23? Yeah, and I think that was the year we all went out to Illinois Railway Museum, and just different things, and some of the associated events with Fiorama, I think, are what kind of stick to my ribs a little bit. Some of the different places and things that we've done in conjunction with the show that was on Sunday. All kind of tie in that whole theme and that whole experience.
Yeah. And again, that is, as the board members, I'm hopefully speaking for all the board members, part of the enjoyment is, once we come up with a theme, then it's like, okay, how do we incorporate this, and how creative can we get in terms of incorporating it into the Saturday event, into the trophies, into the dash plaques, into, just different fun things that we do during the show. that there's just all these different aspects. Is a lot of the board meetings turn into just brainstorm sessions. Somebody comes up with an idea and like, well, let's think about it, and then maybe at the next board meeting we kind of enhance that and elaborate on that idea. And it's all of these board meetings are just kind of like turning into evolutionary, where we just move from taking an initial idea and then incorporating how do we actually end up incorporating it into the weekend event. And for me, that keeps it fresh. It keeps it enjoyable for all of us, I think.
Yeah. Now, none of these shows can work without volunteers. And when you guys first started Fierorama, how many members, or was it just the board that started working Fierorama? And on average, how many volunteers do you need to operate a show like this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, initially the first Fieroramas were really just the board members putting on the show, tabulating the votes and putting the signs out, and making the announcements and doing all the planning. But recently, the number of volunteers is probably upwards of 20 to 30. We try not to overburden our volunteers and having them only work like an hour to an hour and a half shift. So that way they get to enjoy the show and get to, walk the show and be with their friends. It's not like they're a volunteer from the time they show up until the time of the event concludes. So we like to use a lot of volunteers in short periods of time. So there's quite a number of them, and we had them, based on how things have worked in the past. We have different categories of volunteers, and then each of the board members takes up a different category of volunteers, for their particular area of focus for the event itself.
Each year, everything is broken down as to how the volunteers are going to assist in the show. We've got classification, parking lot, ballot counting, registration, merchandise. I'm going to jump to you, Bill. How do you organize and how do you operate, and what do you do in the classification volunteer role at Fierorama?
Yeah, Mike, I'll start by just kind of answering in general terms how each of the leaders of those areas kind of goes about preparing for the show. And that starts with Jim. I think Jim keeps us all on track. He's got milestones that he's trying to meet, in terms of, do we have enough volunteers in car classifying? Do we have enough ballot counters, and who are they going to be? And how many do we need? We evaluate that year to year because things may change a little bit. So in terms of my specific preparation, my area is fairly small. It's not like the parking lot, which is a larger group of volunteers that you have to coordinate with. So typically I'll have, I stay in car classifying the entire early part of the show. And once the show begins, then I go on and do something else. But I typically will have 1 to 3, or maybe 4 volunteers. And that's really just so that we can handle the peak time. So there's times when there's 1 car waiting. There's times when there's 4 or 5. And those are the things we're trying to prepare for and avoid. We don't want people waiting too long, blocking traffic, or and we want them to have a positive experience as they get to the show. Waiting in line isn't a lot of fun. You want to get there and get parked and get your car prepped. So we try and move things along and give them a positive start to the day.
Yeah, I did that with you a couple of years, 2 years ago, I think it was, Bill.
Right, Ken. Yeah, I remember. Yep. Yeah, we've had a variety of people help in car classifying. Ken helped us out, and there's been many others. So it's been good to have.
Well, one of those rainy Fiero.
Yeah.
Do you consider classification one of the harder volunteer roles because you have to know what to look for?
I don't want to get too far off topic, but for me personally, I find it interesting and satisfying. When I started doing car classifying, that was probably around the time we were working, or the concept of the enthusiast guide was coming to fruition. And And so car classifying is a similar process. You have to understand what does a stock car look like, because we've chosen to, over the years, to break up our show based on the number of viewable modifications. And that little phrase right there took us a long time to get to. So you kind of got to know what you're looking at, and in terms of what's the stock car and what's modified, and then of course that got into a whole discussion of if you have a non-stock radio and a seat cover, is that one modification or two modifications? And overall, the way we run Fierorama, it's pretty loose. It's not that rigid. So if an owner feels strongly that he wants to be in the modified class, not the custom class, we'll work with him. It's not that rigid, but we do have guidelines that we're going by, and most people are easygoing and they just want to get to the show. And if they're in a stock class versus a custom class, they don't worry about it a whole lot. But like I said, we do work with them. If they're on the borderline, sometimes it's owner's choice. I say, hey, look, you got to pretty much, you're right on the border. You could go in the stock class, or you could probably go in custom, and they'll tell me their preference, and we'll go with that.
Okay. After they go through classification, you direct them as far as entering the parking lot. Once they enter the parking lot is separated by class. Jim, can you kind of, since Art's not here, can you touch
Sure.
base on how that part of the volunteer section works?
Sure. Yeah. After they come out of classification, they know what class they have been assigned to, and then we have various parking lot attendants, located in specific areas of the parking lot, and they help direct the cars as far as where exactly to park within that class. And we always park it in obviously the next available parking space. At least in more recent years, when we've had the event at Potawatomi Park, we have two entrances to the parking lot, and certain classes enter through the first entrance and other classes enter through the second entrance. And then again, typically there's a one volunteer for maybe two classes of parking in certain areas. And the car comes around to that area where they're supposed to be parked in the class, and then the parking lot volunteer directs them into the next available spot. So very, very organized. We're obviously trying to keep everybody safe, because there are people walking around the parking lot, and you don't want to get anybody in the wrong way of a car moving in the parking lot. So we're just trying to keep it as safe and organized as possible.
All right. The next then is once they get parked, they go inside and they get registered. Paul, you've been doing registration for many, many years. I assume you like it?
I think I don't remember if I actually, whether I ran registration on the first Fiorama. I think we kind of all did this together. We had one pop-up tent that we put up and a table, and that was our registration at Darien. And I think we all kind of participated in getting everybody registered. But I think ever since then, I've probably been in charge of registration. Jim, you might remember some times when that wasn't the case, but I think I always have.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put together a plan, a system, so that when people came in, they get registered, and we check their verification that they were club members. If they weren't club members, they had an option to pay a one-day fee, which was recently been $10, or to join the club at that point. So that has worked out well. I usually have two people with me at the registration table, and we try to cycle people in so there's no more than 2 hours of time for anybody. And it's been pretty seamless because we have a system that's down pat. It works well, and it flows well, and we're able to direct people to do whatever they need to do next by where they need to go. So it's worked out well, and I enjoy doing it because I'm used to it, and I guess most people are used to seeing me at that table when they get there.
I will agree. I think that the system that you have is extremely seamless, and I think on average, I see people when the time they go into the building to register and come out, it's under 5 minutes, and that's really good for registration times, because you don't want to have them lingering or trying to figure things out in registration, get them back out on the field and getting their cars taken care of and mingling with people. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Bill mentioned, I mean, you really don't want to have people waiting around in lines. And I think, the registration and classification process that we have, I mean, I think all the processes actually are streamlined enough so that it keeps people moving. I mean, there are certain periods of time, like in the beginning, Paul, probably at, 9 o'clock to 9:30 when, all the volunteers start showing up and they all kind of travel into registration at the same time that there might be 3 or 4 people waiting in line, but the process is very streamlined, so it moves the people around quickly so that they can get out in the parking lot and socialize, and that's really the real reason for all of us getting together each year.
Mm-hmm. So after registration, you go back out, you get your car cleaned, and around 1 o'clock start passing out ballots, or they've got their ballots so you can start voting. Over the many years, we've had paper ballots. Ken Nagel, who oversees the ballot counting and everything like that, has done great. This year, since we could not hold Fierorama, we held Fiero Day 2020 and gave us an opportunity to try digital ballots. I think that's worked out great this year. Out of the 42 cars that we had 38 ballots returned, highest we've had ever. I think it's easier. It's on your phone, and you don't have to worry about doing anything to figure where to drop the ballot, wait, stuff like that. It's all on your phone. You then have that return emailed to you, so you can, during the award, you can remember the cars that you had voted for as well. Do you guys agree going digital? Maybe not next year, but working it into maybe the following year could be really something looking forward to.
Yeah, I say that's something that we are looking into to see how we can incorporate that into Fierorama, because this year was kind of an experiment, as basically everything that we're doing. I think all of us can attest to that. Homeschooling, learning, everything is kind of an experiment this year, and this was a good-sized crowd to see how we can get it to work, and I think we'll expand it further. If we can iron out some more details, we can certainly incorporate that into the next Fiorama, either the next one or the one after that. So I see us moving towards that direction.
Very cool. Do you want to touch base on merchandise at all? Or I know we've got volunteers that help with that as well. Mm-hmm. Mark's unable to join us today, but he oversees the merchandise, some of the new stuff that comes out, the Fiorama t-shirts. Any input on that, or?
Yeah, we always have all of our club merchandise for sale at Fiorama, because that's kind of a again with the most populated event of the entire year, where we have as many of our club members as possible getting together. We want to give them the opportunity to see all of the club merchandise that we have available, to help promote the club by wearing the merchandise, or just increase your enthusiasm of having a piece of clothing or something that you can wear to kind of generate conversation among people. So we always have a merchandise tent available with all of our club merchandise available for purchase.
And if you can't get it at Fiorama, you can get it at FieroFocus.com.
Mm-hmm. Just to give a plug to the show, or merchandise at the show, we tried to make it convenient to buy merchandise at the show. Obviously, that's to our benefit as well. But you can pay with cash, and recently Mark added the ability to accept credit cards too. So we make it as easy as possible for people to purchase items at the show. And he also always points out that there's no shipping, obviously, after you pick up merchandise there. So it's a nice place to stock up.
Exactly. All right.
And most of all that merchandise too is organic to the club, right? It's not like you can go on Classic Industries and buy a generic Pontiac hat. What you have club merchandise wise is designed by the club, essentially, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, it's all club logo or some. We do have some small quantities of Fiero specific logoed items, but yeah, it's like hats and club T-shirts, and as we mentioned, there's typically a Fierorama themed T-shirt that we have each year, and just all these different items to help promote the club.
And that's one of the key things that helps make Fierorama free too.
Correct.
To the members. We know how hard it is to find Fiero parts. We also know that as years go by, finding parts isn't going to get any easier. The big box stores will never make new Fiero parts because our community is just too small. This is why we need to support the companies that support us. For nearly 30 years, the Fiero store has sponsored our club events, provided free technical support, and produced well over 150 exclusive parts that no big box store would even consider. So, next time you need Fiero parts, head over to thefierostore.com and browse through thousands of products that are specifically designed for your Fiero. That's fierostore.com, the world's largest source of Fiero parts. All right, shifting a little bit, let's talk about location and setup. So with volunteers, they also help with setup and takedown. But before we get into that, there's been 3 locations, correct, of where Fierorama has been held, but the most recent is Potawatomi Park in St. Charles. It's along the Fox River, and it's a very scenic location as well. Where have a couple of the other locations been held before settling at Potawatomi?
Sure. The first location, as we mentioned, was the Chestnut Court Shopping Center in Darien. Held the event there for I think 2 or 3 years. And then we just decided it was time to change the location around. So we moved it to a office building that was in Oak Brook, Illinois. The reason we moved that is because it was right next door to a McDonald's restaurant that was very open to having car shows because they had worked well with the Cruisin' Tigers GTO club at the time. And they had their annual event, the Indian Uprising car show, at that same location. And we just kind of morphed our event into that location just because it was very convenient. Again, the key thing is if you have a long car show, 2 things you need to provide: food for nourishment, and then a place to use facilities, washrooms, etc. So this McDonald's restaurant was literally right next door on the other side of the one edge of the parking lot, and it just was very convenient. And then we morphed into moving it to Potawatomi Park when one of our board members who was on or knew one of the board members of the St. Charles Park District was able to get us into that location. And that kind of, for me, that is, of all of them, that has been my favorite location because, Mike, as you mentioned earlier, this was it's a very scenic location. A lot of the Fiero shows that take place are, generally in hotel parking lots, commercial parking lots, because you need all that space to park the cars. And Potawatomi Park offers that, along with beautiful views of the Fox River, trees all around. It's just more than just a parking lot itself. It's kind of a nice setting to have an event that we hold each year.
Do you see the show moving at all, and moving away from the Fox River?
I personally don't see that, as long as they still allow us to have the event there. I mean, it's the right size for us. It still allows room for expansion within the parking lot. You know, if the event size ever increases, but it seems to be just at this point in time, it seems to be just the right size for us, and we're able to use the facilities. And I think a lot of people appreciate just the area and the scenery. Again, that it's not just a blacktop commercial parking lot and out in the middle of nowhere. You know, it's a destination. It's something different that the rest of the car shows and a lot of the different car clubs in the area. You know, we do that differently than some of those other ones.
On average, how long does it? So going back to the start and finish of an average Fiorama, how long does it take to set up and take down the show?
I'm going to say for setup, it's probably if we if we had to do it, we could probably do the whole thing in about an hour to an hour and a half. I generally, like to show up around between 7 and 7:30. That way you're not under that pressure, just in case, you struggle with something, trying to set up one of the easy ups or something like that. But I think realistically, we could probably have the whole event set up within an hour to an hour and a half. And generally we take about 2 hours or so and kind of ease into it. Getting there at about 7 o'clock, the first cars start to show up around 9 o'clock, and by that time we're, the general layout of the show field is ready to go, and we're at that point ready to start accepting the registrations.
Has the show always been from 9 to 5?
The official hours, I'm not sure about the early years, but at least in the latter years, the current years, the official time is from 12 until 5, but we open the doors at 9 because that allows hours for people to socialize and get your car ready, meet up with your friends and kind of reconnect with everybody before the actual official start time happens at 12 o'clock. So there are people that show up at 9 o'clock and people that show up at 10, 10:30, 11, and usually most of our crowds are there by between 12 and 12:30, which is when we're ready to start rolling the event out.
Nice. All right, so I'm gonna shift gears and kind of pick Ken's brain here for a second. What do you think is the biggest draw to come to Fierorama as a participant looking in on it?
Well, when I think back to the first ones that I went to, it was right after we had gotten our second Fiero. We had a Fiero originally back in the day, and we picked up our second Fiero, or sold the first one, picked up the second one back in 2011, and it was a mess. I wasn't it wasn't really anything worthy of taking to a show, so I thought. So the first one that I went to, and what drew me to it was what other Fieros are still out there. I back in the day when these things were first new, you couldn't hardly, swing a dead cat without seeing a red Fiero somewhere driving around. But when this is 2011, when I first went, it's like, how many of these things are still left out there? Because you surely don't see them anymore. So what drew me to it was I wanted to see what other cars were out there, what kind of condition they were in. Who still had theirs from way back in the day, and just kind of get reacquainted with the Fiero world again, because we'd been out of it for quite a while. And then later on, especially these last few years, in addition to the actual show, it's been some of the events and activities surrounding the Fierorama event. Things that I mentioned earlier, like for the year that it was Get on the Fiero train. We all went out to Illinois Railway Museum, and the adage of getting there was half the fun really was true in that case, because I don't remember how many Fieros we had going out there, but it seemed like about 15, 17, 20 Fieros. I don't remember exactly, but this whole train of Fieros going west out of St. Charles, headed out to Union and everything. I mean, that I always think that's pretty cool, just doing that kind of stuff. And again, it's in conjunction with the show itself. It makes it more than just a car show. It turns it into an event. The Friday nights when we would all go out to the car show out at the lodge, so you'd end up with 20, 30 Fieros out there on that Friday night of Fiorama weekend. Those are the kind of things that I enjoy, and my wife goes with me too, and she enjoys that quite a bit, because Fiorama isn't just something that we have found is for just car guys. And there's plenty of shows out there that are just car people. This is something that has events and activities and interesting things to do for everybody. And just some of these activities, like I mentioned, I think are a pretty good example of that. And my wife thoroughly enjoys going to all that kind of stuff too. And that's what keeps us coming back, is some of that different stuff. Not that I wouldn't anyway, but that makes it something we can do together.
And I think that's a big draw too, is that it opens it up not just to the Fiero owner, but to the family and anybody else who wants to come as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I can just elaborate on that, I know, Ken, I'm very glad to hear that Therese enjoys coming to or participating in Fierorama, because I know there's a lot of time spent when we are planning out the events. Because if it was just a one-day show, yeah, that would just be fine for the owner of the Fiero. But since it's a 3-day event, you have to kind of always think about, okay, so there's 2 seats in the Fiero. There, obviously, the driver is going to bring somebody, their significant other. And we always have to focus in on, okay, so what is that significant other going to do while we're doing something? And that kind of is a clincher, and we do spend a lot of time on what that Saturday event is going to be, so that it's enjoyable for everybody that participates. And we're encouraging people to not come alone. We're encouraging to bring somebody with you that you can share the weekend experience with. So I'm very glad to hear that comment, because again, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that the events are designed properly, so that everybody that participates finds it enjoyable.
One last question.
You even brought your daughter. Mike, I think you even brought your daughter to the Illinois Railway Museum event, didn't you?
Yeah.
It looked like you have a great old time.
And she had a blast, and she keeps asking when we're going to be going back. So. Yeah. One more question, Ken. Is location key for you, or would you go to Fiorama and spend the Fiorama weekend, no matter where the show is being held?
Well, if the show was held on the West Coast, that might change my. But it's very nice to have it essentially 15 minutes up the road from my house. I know not everybody gets the luxury of that, but on the other hand, it is fun to take a road trip once in a while too. So within reason, we would certainly be open to that. And if it's like some of the summer days we've been on, I would actually have to get the air conditioning fixed to make a longer trip. But But yeah, I mean, if it was something that was a little further out, it might affect going every year, but it would definitely not rule anything out. Like, for example, when they had the big Fiero 35th event down in Peoria, that was a lot of fun to do as well. A little bit of driving, but on the other hand, it was fun to get out and put a few miles on the car and see some new things.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone's heard of Rodney Dickman. Everybody's purchased parts and other things from Rodney Dickman. But did you know he now has brand new undercarriage coolant tubes? Well, let's give a little backstory. The replacement undercar coolant tube story started back in 1984 when the Fiero first hit the streets. Some Fiero owners eventually needed replacement undercar coolant tubes. Many times the problem started at the repair shops. They put the pads under the tubes, and as the car was lifted, it dented and or crushed most of the tubes along as it was being lifted. After they were no longer available from GM, if they even ever were, one could only search for a good one at a junkyard or somebody else who has some of the parts. Good used ones could be found, but if you did, they were too large to ship. The post office, FedEx, UPS wouldn't even ship them, not even Greyhound. Another problem was the undercarriage corrosion under the clamps. A big problem in the 84 to 87 was that they go up and over the front suspension. Even if you put the 84, 87 up on the rack, you still had to maneuver around the front suspension. Sometimes you even had to remove the front suspension. So, Rodney Dickman had been asked many times over the past 20 plus years for replacement coolant tubes. His response was, "I was always told the same thing. Good ones and used ones are out there, but they're too big to ship." So, fast forward to today, and you will still find that good ones are now very difficult to find, and when you find them, still hard to ship. So, the only idea that Rodney Dickman had was he contacted a few Fiero people that have worked on parts and or parted out Fieros. They talked, and all these new undercar coolant tubes, they told him, these tubes are generally never damaged where they bend inward behind the front wheels and go forward. The damage is always along the sides and the back. So, Rodney Dickman developed these repair kits. You can cut your existing tubes and install this 304 stainless steel repair section. So, this thorn in everyone's side now on these coolant replacement tubes is now a thing of the past. To order one, you can visit www.rodneydickmanaccessories.com. Try them out. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. So many shows have stood out, but the one show that has really stood out for me was the pre-9/11 Fierorama, because it was 6 days, 3 days, 2 days, yeah. Fierorama 6, it was just 2 days before the tragic attacks. And that was also the year that I won the V8 conversion kit. The second most memorable was Fierorama 10, and that's because that was the first time I was ever able to see the prototypes, and that really kind of cemented me into the Fiero more and into the history. And then the most recent was Fierorama 24, when we were able to salute our veterans with the color guard. But mostly, it's the Fiero family that really attracts everybody to Fierorama 2, and seeing and talking to everyone. So let's go fairly quickly. We'll start with Bill. What would you consider your one or two, three most memorable Fieroramas? As either a participant or as a volunteer?
I feel like it's been so long since I've been a participant. I almost don't remember it. It's been a long time. And I've had many years of being annoyed at watching all the fantastic gifts we give away and door prizes and things that board members aren't privy to, but that's fine. That's how it should be. Mike, you pointed out 9/11, and I was thinking as you were saying it, you're right. Everyone certainly remembers where they were on that day, and if the fact that our show was just a couple days prior to that kind of shows the contrast between life as it was before 9/11 and life as it was after 9/11, and so it's that's pretty moving if you think about it in that aspect. The the specifics about the show, the prototypes was big because that wasn't something, well, anybody really, most people didn't have an opportunity to see. So getting them to Fierorama was almost one of their first general public unveilings, which was really cool. It just was nice to be able to be a part of that and to be able to provide that to our members, to view into those cars and to get up close and personal with them was awesome. I certainly remember, some of the rainy events; those were memorable, not in a great way, but we made it work. I guess for me, it's and this is general too, again, but a lot of the planning, and there's a lot of work that goes into these things, and so when it comes together well, it's something to be proud of for this team, and so I'll always remember that, and the many hours we all put into it to make it run right and be a successful event for the people that are attending.
Well, thank you. Those are some great memories. Paul, your thoughts?
Well, I have to agree that number 10, the prototype show, was probably the most exciting, interesting one that I've ever attended or worked with. I remember when the trucks from Detroit or Pontiac or wherever it is rolled into the show and unloaded the prototype cars, and we had big tents all set up along the north side of that parking lot by McDonald's there. That's a pretty exciting time. We had a lot of people that weren't even Fiero people that would come and visit and walk around those prototypes. So that's probably the most memorable one. However, also one of my most favorite is Fierorama #1, because it was the first time we were able to bring our club members together and have it in a Fierorama type show. And I think that was the most enjoyable one to put it together. And as Jim mentioned, we had 70 some cars, which by today's standards is pretty darn good back, at that time. So I seem to remember that one and the most, and even the second one where we jammed into the pizza place for awards seem to always bring back memories to me.
Yeah.
Jim?
As Paul mentioned about Fiorama 10, when we had the prototypes, I remember we spent a lot of time figuring out what are we going to do, where are we going to park cars if we max out the parking lot. And we actually had to talk to a second business across the street that we were going to use for overflow parking. And then we had to worry about pedestrian traffic moving from one edge to the other, and crossing off 22nd Street to figure out how are we going to have foot traffic across there, going across that street. So that was definitely a memorable one. I was just back in 2015, we did a kind of a 20-year review club meeting, and I did a PowerPoint presentation on Fierorama. And something that actually was interesting was we did a whole section on the Fierorama themes, and I'm just going to throw these themes out, and I think they're going to rekindle some memories for many of us. 2006, Rolling on the River. 2007, Fieros on the Fox. Here's one, 2008, Lucky 13. We had a poker theme with the Las Vegas theme with fuzzy dice and Fierorama tokens.
I remember that.
That was a fun one. Fierorama in 2011 was Sweet 16. We had 3 colors of Fiero logoed M&Ms, red, white, and silver. We had representing the first 3 colors of Fiero production. We sold or had Fiero-shaped cookies that were baked by my wife, Jenny Hallman. We had trophies with clear plastic cylinders filled with the colors of M&Ms. And And then, as I mentioned before about Fierorama 2013, Fierorama Goes to the Movies, we had movie posters with Fieros featured on them. We had the key sponsor stars on the sidewalk. We had dash plaques, which are actually movie tickets. The Academy Award style trophies. We had red carpets, tuxedo shirts, and the popcorn cart. I mean, as these themes started expanding, we just, again, it just brings enjoyment to myself and all the board members as far as just planning these events out, and just then seeing the enjoyment of the people that come to the events and participating in it, and them just having the fun of showing up and just enjoying the day with us. That's I think the highlight of each year for me.
Yeah, that's a lot of memories for you too. Ken?
Oh, I don't have the history that some of you guys do, and to pick out I know which Fieros I think I'm sorry that I missed, including number 10. That one sounds particularly interesting. And the cookies is a good idea too, Jim. I think we should do that every year. But for me, it's been probably the most recent 2 or 3, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, right in there. Because those are the ones that I was able to come and participate in the whole weekend, as opposed to just the Sunday. And the 23rd in particular, when John Cafaro came and gave some of his information, his presentation about his hand in the design and of the car and all that kind of stuff. I enjoyed that one quite a bit. That was probably my favorite one so far. Unfortunately, last year I wasn't able to come, but they've all been good in their own way from a participant standpoint. And there's always been something fun to do. The shows have always been very well run, and everything ran like clockwork from a participant standpoint. But probably the last couple, 3 years, I don't know, maybe it's a cliche to say this here, but I just think they keep getting better for me. The more events that I've gone to, each year there's always a little extra twist, a little something different that makes it even a little bit more fun. And I hope they keep going that way.
Yeah.
Ken, you brought up a good point, and I'm surprised we all didn't say John Cafaro as one of our most memorable, because at the time he was still with GM and he was able to make that trip down and attend Fierorama, and he gave a very, very nice presentation at the towards the end of the show too. So I'm surprised that that didn't kind of make our top 2, but that is another one that is a very good memory, and thank you for reminding us of that, because again, I mean, a high executive GM gentleman coming down and checking the show out. Jim, do you remember his thoughts on the show?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in that. I was kind of working behind the scenes trying to get all the ballots tabulated, so I missed the whole presentation on that, unfortunately.
What was did he say or mention anything about the show, or?
Yeah, and when we were doing the awards presentation, he was very complimentary. Somebody who was not involved with the Fiero community at all, was just very, very surprised at how strong we were as a group, and how enthusiastic we were for the Pontiac Fiero, which he had a hand in designing. And it was interesting when we concluded the event, we actually gave him a Fierorama T-shirt and also a copy of the Enthusiast Guide, and he had promised to give that to Mary Barra, the current president of General Motors. And a few days after that Fierorama, I received a personal email from Mary that said thank you for the donations, and that the copy of the Enthusiast Guide was going to be placed in the General Motors library, of historical library. So Mary actually worked on the Fiero back in the day, so she was again very appreciative of the history and that the Fiero is still alive and well. So yeah, we very much thank John for attending, and hopefully we'll be able to do that again at some point.
Yeah, and just as we were, Ken brought it up, I found his thank you letter and just a couple excerpts from it. He says, "Finally, after many years of saying to myself, I need to get to a Fiero Club event, I finally made it. And I am so glad I did. Saying I was too busy or whatever is a lame excuse." He goes on to say that he was very impressed with the innovative mods that he saw. Confirmed that what we knew about the customers back then, but someone who buys a Fiero is someone who has a restless creativity and expresses that through their Fiero. From the body mods, lighting, color, trim. He says, "I must admit, I did not know much room in a Fiero engine compartment had, but it had enough to accommodate a modern V8 power engine. As I write this, almost 2 months have passed since my visit to St. Charles, and I find myself re-immersing myself in the Fiero, unearthing old photos, sketches, tickets to races, and even old expense reports from England when we were creating the Spice GT." So, yeah, the letter goes on, and I agree. I think he had a great time, and it's just something that when you attend Fiorama, you never know what's really going to pop up or behind you.
Yeah, and going on that idea, I mean, that was something that that had just occurred that year, probably within about 5 days of the event taking place. And Fred Bartemeyer and I of the Heartland Fieros kind of worked that whole plan out as far as getting him a hotel room, figuring out, you know, when he could do a kind of a lecture presentation, where he would do that, you know, renting the room for that. I mean, all that was taking place within about 3 days of the event itself. So that was kind of a last minute decision. You know, because as you mentioned beforehand, he was still an employee of General Motors. You know, so he only has limited time for doing events such as this, and you know, we just had to put everything in place within a matter of, you know, at the last minute, so to speak, and it all worked out.
I think wasn't he involved with Corvette C8 design at the time too?
I forget if it was that. I know it was the I think it was the current Camaro that he had a hand in, you know, the final approval or something. But I think he had worked on one of the Corvettes. I don't think it was the current one, but I think it was the a generation or two behind that.
Have you asked yourself, what is the Midwest Fiero Clubs? Well, the Midwest Fiero Clubs, which is also a region of the AACA, is a dedicated group of enthusiasts whose passion is to promote and preserve the Pontiac Fiero and the Fiero community. The Midwest Fiero Clubs consists of members from existing Fiero clubs across the U.S. The Midwest Fiero Club's intent is to support member clubs and promote the Fiero-related events that they offer. The intent is to enable enthusiasts to discover events in their areas other than their own, and to warrant participation. This has created a tighter-knit Fiero community of the owners and created some great regional shows that may not have otherwise happened. So, how do I find out about them? You can visit the website at midwestfieroclubs.aaca.com or just Facebook them at Midwest Fiero Clubs AACA and like them. One of the other things that makes Fiorama special, starting back in 2004, when the Midwest Fiero Clubs started gaining momentum and every year there's a theme for their competition that spotlights a certain Fiero make, model, custom, interior. Every year, the winners of those shows at the circuits through the Midwest gets an invitation to come to Fierorama to compete in the best in the Midwest and have those bragging rights. What are some of those competition categories have been decided at Fierorama? And which of the winners at each of those shows would you say was probably the most excited to win those awards?
The whole Midwest Fiero Club's theme started, as you mentioned, back in 2004, and it started out as a kind of a trying to celebrating the 20th anniversary of the 1984 model year Fiero. We said, well, I wonder how many cars are still original. So we went with the theme was the best original 84, and then the next year we moved to the best original 85 and continued on through 88. And the whole idea behind that was that each of the clubs in the Midwest Fiero clubs, starting out with the Dells and then moving into Minnesota and then moving to the Heartland Show, Missouri, and then finally concluding at Fierorama, because our show is the last show within the series before, because it takes place in September, kind of the tail end of the car show season. So each of these shows selects their best representative of the theme, and then that gets them the right to be in and compete for the Best in the Midwest series at Fierorama. So generally we have, I think we've had as many as 6, possibly more. I wasn't able to check all the records, but I know back when we first did this, there were 6 competing cars from across the Midwest for the best original 84. And I think I don't remember any one individual being more excited than the rest. Maybe somebody else on the presentation today would offer a different insight, but I think each one has been sincerely enthusiastic and sincerely appreciative of winning that particular award, whether it be the best original series, whether it be the best engine, whether it be the best modification. Most recently, we had the best female-owned Fiero in the Midwest, and I genuinely believe that each of those winners was very honored to receive that award. So I think no one stands out for me. I think that they all are very appreciative.
It has been a great competition too, because you at Fierorama you get to see cars that you probably won't be able to see on the circuit unless you are traveling a lot, going up to Minnesota, like you said, Iowa, Michigan. So it is a good way to bring a lot of people within those Midwest areas down to St. Charles and compete. And they can get a feel of what Fierorama is like. And just in some of the past podcasts that I've done with Fierorama, a lot of the first timers that have never come are just so shocked at how well the show is put together, and just how the Fiero community down here it just engulfs them into the family, and they try to get back year to year as well. So I think ending the competition, having the big competition at Fierorama, is a good spotlight too, not only on the show but for the Midwest Fiero clubs as well. One thing I did not touch on: how many if you could remember, and maybe Paul, you can kind of remember this too, or even if in passing on for Bill, how many first timers over the years have come up and said, "This is my first time, and this show is very well put together"?
Well, I think we always have some of those. The question is, I don't know that I can tell you how many, but I would guess every year there's a smattering, maybe 2 to 4 people who have said this is the first time they've come to Fiorama. Jim, you may have a better feel for that than I do, but we always have a small group of people that have not only said it's their first time, but they have really enjoyed it and plan on coming back again.
Yeah, I know even, well, here's a perfect example this year at Fiero Day 22, I'm sorry, Fiero Day 2020. We had 40 cars, and 2 of those individuals had never attended Fiero, any Fiero event. And both of them, again, very complimentary on our scaled down version of a show this year. So yeah, I would agree with Paul. There's a small group, maybe 2 to 4 people per year, that have either just joined the Fiero community, or maybe had heard about Fiorama from another car show and decided, you know what, I'm going to come and see what this event's all about, just to kind of rekindle the excitement for the Fiero. And I think that's another thing that we have not really touched on yet today was, getting together really just kind of builds your enthusiasm for the Fiero and for being with your friends. That's kind of the central theme that's been going through the entire discussion today, and it kind of keeps the enthusiasm up for all of our board members, and we hope it keeps the enthusiasm up for all of our participants to keep the Fiero alive and exciting for everybody.
Yeah, some good words there. As we start winding down here, I know this year would have been the big 25 for Fiorama. Unfortunately, it was postponed, but we did have a great Fiero Day 2020. Looking at next year, do you think that Fiorama 25 and the culmination of N.I.F.E turning 30 will come back strong?
I would say, yeah, that's the hope. I don't want to, with the uncertainty that we've had this year, and I don't want to say yes, we'll be there September of 2021. That's definitely my hope. I certainly want to put an event on, and I'm hoping for that. But yeah, when we do get together again and celebrate the Fierorama 25, now that it's going to coincide with the 5-year anniversary of the event, maybe that's kind of the overall big picture plan, was to have these 2 things coincide for every 5 years now. I don't know, but that's going to be a big celebration, because I think once we get through the COVID-19 that we're involved with now, people are going to be ready to celebrate, and it's going to be just the enjoyment of just being together again as a huge community, a huge representative of the Fiero community, as well as a good reason to get together, that we've had 25 Fieroramas to celebrate, and we've had 30 years of our club to celebrate. And I'm looking forward to a huge party that year.
I think we all are. Do you guys, actually, I think we know the theme, but do you think the theme that was introduced this year, which was, I think it was Flying High, or Soaring to New Heights?
Soaring to New Heights.
Yeah. Do you see keeping that theme next year? And I think one of the big events that we were going to do was go to the Waukegan Air Show on that Saturday. Do you still see that as the big event?
Yeah, I personally see that as our theme for Fierorama 25, and we already got fairly extensively involved with planning out the theme, and basically it would just be rekindling our notes and getting everything ready, changing the dates, and continuing where we left off when things started to hit back in March of this year, 2020.
All right. So we have something to look forward to. I'm excited about that. All
You're not
right.
the only one.
Yes. Are you looking for that special personalized gift for someone? Bontour Solutions can help you find that one-of-a-kind gift. Anything from t-shirts, sweatshirts, drinkware, signs, decorative items, holiday items, and so much more. They can design pretty much anything you want on them, from pictures of your car, your favorite sports team, a pet, or any saying that you want. The list is endless. Minimums are just one of each of any item, and the best thing is, they do not charge a setup fee. You can catch Bontour Solutions at several Fiero and Pontiac events in the area, Fierorama, the Dells Run, the 40th anniversary show coming up in a couple years, and the 2021 Indian Uprising All Pontiac show. So, feel free to visit their website at bontourgifts.web.com or give them a call at 847-453-3290. You can also email them at bonnie@bontoursolutions.com. We also have promotional item products that they offer as well. That website is bontoursolutions.com. Final thoughts. We'll go down the line again here. Bill, final thoughts?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure helping out with planning for Fiorama, and I don't know if we may emphasize it enough or call it out, but it's an ongoing process. So we just about tear down, one Fiorama, and the board is meeting shortly thereafter to talk heavily about what are we doing next year, get the theme set, So it's a constant process, but it's a fun one. It's always interesting to see how we try and improve the show. Jim keeps real good track of data. So did we have, is one class of car growing where another one's shrinking? How does that affect the parking lot? Do we need to make any adjustments? So that's always interesting to see. And another thought that we didn't touch on, but I wanted to mention was another highlight for me over the years was the Fiero raffles we did. We gave away cars, and it's interesting when you try and explain to people who they don't appreciate how involved we are in this hobby. They don't really know the Fiero, and you say, yeah, we're planning a car show. I think what's in their mind, and especially when you say Fiero show, what's in their mind is probably a couple guys getting together under a tree, sipping a few beers and talking about their cars. We know that's not the case. But I think the car raffle called that out even more. So when you follow up, yeah, I'm planning this car show that's going to be in September. And oh, by the way, we're giving a car away. Now that's a whole different scale. That's like your mind, again, somebody who's not familiar, I would think their mind would go to major corporate event. Large organizations give away cars. We managed to pull it off several times, and I thought that was really cool and something to look forward to. So, I think Fiorama is going to continue to prosper. We'll get through this COVID thing and move on, but I don't see I see it changing. You mentioned earlier we were talking about, do we get new members? And yeah, we do. And those are just people who have maybe had a car for years and they just never came to the show, so they show up. But I think also we're going to start transitioning into the people who inherited a vehicle from their grandfather or from their father, because we're aging, let's face it. Fiero owners are getting older, and so these cars are going to get passed down to younger people who haven't been involved the way we have over the years, and they're going to bring a new energy and a new perspective to it too. So things will continue to evolve as we go forward.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up at the end here final thoughts. The car giveaways that we've had over the years. We've had raffles, which were national advertised raffles, and we gave away a raffle off an '86 GT. And Jimmy might correct me on these. I'm getting a little old on some of these, but an '86 GT. Then we did an '88 GT, and then we did an '85 SE, which was Jerry Goodwin's Quad 4 car. I think those were the three that we did.
Yes,
and and we sold tickets nationally all over the country. And I think, again, as part of Fiorama, we've come up with some unique ideas and things that we've done that have shown a bright light on our club, on what we've been able to do that no other club or organization associated with Fieros has been able to do. And now we have a playbook as such that we use, and all the basics are there, and we just keep adding on unique little features, for example, the digital voting. And every year we come up with something just a little bit to add to it that makes it easier to run and becomes more interesting to people to come. So, I think we'll continue on. The question is, will we be able to expand the number of cars that come? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sorry, I hit the mute there for a second. Jim, you're next.
Sure. Yeah. One thing that Bill mentioned was, it seems like we conclude Fiorama and then it's like we jump right into the next one. One of the things that we always do at the conclusion of Fiorama, we typically have a board meeting, like a week or two after the event takes place. And one of the things that we do is we talk about, okay, what would we like to improve for the upcoming year? And each year we always come up with a list of, sometimes it's 3 things, sometimes it's 6 things. But each year we try to make improvements in the event of something that, it worked okay, but we can improve it. We can streamline it. We can make it easier for somebody because, we're all volunteers. We're not trying to, put more hours into this event. We're trying to make this an efficient planning for this event. So each year we do improvements for the upcoming year. Then we discuss those. We come up with a list and then we table it. We don't look at that list until maybe April or May, just before the event takes place in September. And there's a certain thing that happens like come January, we talk about the event dates, and that's really when we solidify the date with the St. Charles Park District because they usually assign the dates at their January board meeting. So we have a date. We start maybe hashing out some ideas for a theme. And then it's really kind of lay low. Yeah, we do talk about it at each of the board meetings, February, March, April, May. But then it really starts to get very heavily involved in the real focus of the board meetings come June, July, and August. And so I've learned that over time you don't want to spend too much time on this because then you start overthinking it and you come up with some idea, but then later on you change it and. There's so much activity that as board members that we want to accomplish each year that I don't want to have all of our meetings focus on Fiorama. So that's why, we talk about what needs to be talked about from January through, let's say, March or April, May timeframe. But coming up, I have to agree with Paul. I'm not sure where the numbers are going to be as the Fiero continues to move into like the second generation of Fiero enthusiasts. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is that the values are starting to increase. I mean, people are paying $18,000, $20,000, $22,000 for a nice pristine car these days. So that's kind of changing the demographics of if you're spending that kind of money on the Fiero. Maybe the trailers are going to start coming out, and they're going to start going into new hands, people that have different intentions of purchasing and holding on to their Fiero. And hopefully they're just not going to be added into museum collections that we never see. Hopefully they're going to bring them out to events such as Fiorama so that we can see them and enjoy these cars. So that's going to be a different aspect that we're going to have to think about, and maybe we're going to start seeing over the coming years. But I am looking forward to working on Fiorama for years to come, and we'll continue adapting as we need to for the current participants at the time.
I agree, and I look forward to working on many, many, many more Fioramas as well and attending them. Ken, what are your final thoughts? I have a special guest with me right now, too.
I hear that. Well, as I think about it, I think Fierorama and by extension the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts and Midwest Fiero clubs in general all are a great way to keep the Fiero relevant. I mean, let's face it had a relatively short production run. And as commonplace as they were in the day when they first came out, most people today just had no idea that these cars even existed. And by putting on events like Fierorama and making it a total event, and getting out there and doing the different cruises and things like that are a great way to keep awareness of the car up there. So that people who have no idea what these things are and think that the only mid-engine car General Motors ever produced was these new Corvettes say, well, no, it's not quite like that, because here are these cars that are now getting older than I care to think about, but they're out there, and now people, more and more people have become aware of them. The more events like this that we do, and I think Fierorama by extension is a great way to get the word out there that, hey, these cars are still out there, they're still relevant, they're still very innovative. Some of the things the innovations that these cars introduced back then in the day are now commonplace and across new cars today. And these aren't just old cars; these are very unique, special old cars that deserve to have events dedicated to them. And it's an important part of the car culture too. And for that reason, I hope Fierorama keeps going. It will be interesting to see the demographic change over the years. I'm not getting any younger either. My kids aren't really interested in my cars, so I don't know what's going to happen to them. But it could look very different in when we get to Fierorama 50. The participants might be looking a little different by then.
I will say I like the diversity of cars that we have, and you have the almost a showroom style car, and you have the heavily modified that somebody has put their blood and sweat into, and I think we saw that in 2019 when I forget the gentleman's name. He had the Fiero drag car with the engine in the front. And just to hear his story and how long it took him to put that car together was just awe-inspiring. But those are some of the things that you
could sure hear when he was coming into the show.
Oh too. Yeah,
you're not going to sneak into the show.
But those are just some of the unique cars that come out to Fierorama, and you can't see them if you don't come. So I come to Fierorama, see some of the unique stuff that you may not see, and you see some surprises. So
yeah, and to tag along that, I mean, we have quite a variety of cars that show up each year, and I'm just the thought just popped in my head that maybe it's because of the class structures that we do have. I mean, they're still, we don't focus in on the daily driven car anymore. But again, one of the unique things that we do is that our classes are based off of the mileage on the cars, so that your Fiero that's a showroom car is only competing with a car with less than 50,000 miles, which on a 35-year-old car, I mean that's very low mileage. So maybe that is the draw of such diversity, is because the way we have our classes set up. We do have custom classes based on, again, as Bill mentioned earlier, about viewable modifications, so that kind of designates which class you're going to go into. And I think maybe that criteria helps with the diversity that we have attending the show.
And you're competing with other cars like your car. You're not a stock car competing against somebody who is a radical modified car. Correct. So everybody is competing in that same category, which is really good too.
Yep.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining me and taking time out of your morning to chat with me. So
Sure.
again, I hope everybody enjoyed reminiscing and seeing what goes into what puts Fiorama together. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of anybody on the N.I.F E board about Fiorama, but look at some of our future publications on updates of what's going on for Fiorama 25. Again, I want to thank everybody, Jim Hallman, Bill Clicker, Paul Vargas, and our special guest, Ken Brown. So, again, thank you, everybody, and we will see you at the next Fiorama. All right. Again, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Fierocast and chatting about Fiorama. I hope you learned some of the insights of what goes into Fiorama and the history of Fiorama and how we've arrived at the big 25th anniversary of the show. Hopefully everything goes well over the next year and we will be able to see everybody at the 25th. So thank you again for listening, and a big thank you to all our guests today. Again, you can find our podcasts at FieroFocus.com, on our YouTube channel, at Knife Club on Facebook, and at Fiorama on Facebook. Thank you to Rodney Dickman, the Fiero Store, Bonter Solutions, Fiero Focus Magazine, and again, our 2 Facebook pages. If you like more information or have some ideas on some future casts, you can email me at mkroyer@fierofocus.com. Until next time, thank you, good night, and keep Fieroing.